2021. But before we go into that, I'd like to welcome our host, Matsepo Dibetso, to just welcome everyone and give us an overview of what the event or the webinar is about.
Thank you so much, Mash. A very warm welcome to everyone, to our panelists. A very warm welcome to GCIS, our partner in this conversation. My name is Matsepo Dibetso. I am Communications Manager of Agape Youth Movement. We're a youth-led movement that works in GBV prevention. We also partner with Department of Basic Education and other development partners. We found it very imperative to have this conversation today, as we have had others. It's important to, one, encourage voting amongst the youth, because your vote is your ticket to participation and active citizenry in an active, democracy. It's important that people are aware of the right they carry, but also being aware of our history, that the vote did not come cheap. And I think that when people, struggle with whether or not to vote, I think we should always remember that, we are a people of history, and where we come from as a nation, this vote was not cheap. And encouraging also that participation, to say, if you do want to, see change in your communities, in your respective, schools and districts and metros, you really do need to go to the ballot and take that decision to the ballot and, demand the type of change that you want. You need to be active in deciding who you want as your leader, because at the end of the day, it's your country. And it's your democracy to fight for and to defend. And in that defense, you're also, determining your own autonomy. You can also hold people accountable, your leaders, and say, I voted for you and I expect X, Y, and Z. Unfortunately, we live in such a precarious time. I mean, it's COVID, we're living through a pandemic. There's also a high, rate of youth unemployment, and very many other things that affect perhaps even the expected excitement to go to the ballot. But I feel like it's important that we do encourage people to go to the ballot. You are the change maker. That vote, however little you may consider it to be, is your voice, and your voice in a democracy is incredibly, incredibly important. That's to say, as Agape Youth Movement, we really are encouraging the youth to take their voices to the ballot and be active in deciding the type of future that you want for yourself. Be responsible and hold the leaders and the powers that be accountable, but also participate, decide for yourself the type of country that you want to live. This is yours, this is your time. If there was any other time to go out there and actually decide on what you want and be able to later say, I voted for you, I expect X, Y, and Z. It's very important. Go out there and vote, man. Thank you, Mash, and wishing everyone a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Matsepo. So as we get closer to the local government elections, I just want to give a context of the state of the nation with regards to youth participation in voting. Statistics South Africa 2021's mid-year population estimated that the age group between the ages of 18 to 29 compromises a third of all eligible voters. But local government elections haven't seen a decline in voter turnout among the youth with past national and local elections, with reports detailing that only about half of the eligible youth registered to vote, and not only that, of those who registered, less than 50% actually showed up to the polls and put their mark. So we are here because we'd like to dissect and discuss ways to encourage the youth to participate in the upcoming elections. And the aim of this panel discussion is to scrutinize the reasons why it appears that the youth is disinterested or unable to participate in the local government elections. With that, I'd like to introduce our panelists before I go into some house rules and commence with the proceedings of this webinar. We have 4 amazing panelists. Our first is Crystal Duncan, who's the project leader at Youth Capital. And then we have Hotso Sotoane, who's an Activate Change driver. And then we also have Nhlanhla Lags-Lamini joining the panel, who's a youth leader and activist, founder and president of the Soweto Parliament. And finally, we have Rebone Tawo, who's a political analyst and human rights activist. So going into house rules for the panelists, please mute your mic when you're not speaking. And then for the audience, we do have a Q&A chat box, and we encourage you to please participate. Share your opinion in the chat box, share your perspective, share your reasoning, comment on whatever you agree or disagree with any of the panelists. And then, of course, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat box, and we will have our panelists address them towards the end of this webinar. So going straight into it, Crystal, I'd like to pose this question to you. So youth voter participation is a challenge, not only in South Africa, but across the globe. In your perspective, why is there youth hesitancy in participating in elections?
So I think first to kind of say upfront that young people are engaged with politics, right? At Youth Capital, we have hundreds of WhatsApp groups going with young people across a range of issues. And young people are speaking about these national elections. But what we continually hear from young people is, why bother to vote when our vote is, fought for and lobbied for in the time of elections, and, a month later, nothing has changed. And 5 years from now, nothing would have changed for us. What are the leaders really doing to provide services for young people that they need? And I think the issues of corruption are so forefront on young people's minds. It's coming up quite a lot as well in the conversations that we've seen. So I think, we can flip this conversation around and say, yes, we need to encourage young people to vote, but we need to flip it back at the politicians who are running for those seats and say to them, what are you doing to encourage young people to vote? And what are you going to do to make sure that their vote has some meaning beyond you just winning the polls come 1st November? What are your plans? I think, I've been reading some kind of, some comments, some of the manifestos, and while, these are municipal elections, and so it's really about service delivery, but how does that pertain to a young person? Youth unemployment is obviously forefront on young people's minds. And so I would flip it back at the people running for these board councillor positions and say, what can you do in your community to unlock opportunities for young people? Whether that's making sure the local library works and there's connectivity there so people can go and upload their CVs and apply for jobs, whether that's, doing a campaign with local businesses in your area to give young people opportunities to gain some work experience. What are you doing? And then what are you doing with your provincial government, for broader scale programs like public works employment programs? And I think the other thing we're starting to see conversations around, and I think the idea of independent candidates coming in this election speaks to this, is that young people are saying we're tired of old people trying to tell us what, is the right thing to do or what we want, or them assuming that they know what they want and how to lead, when actually we as young people, we want to stand up, we're ready. But I think that the way things, the way policies are put out, the way politics is presented to young people is presented in a very conservative, jargony way. And I think if we want young people to vote, then there should be more content in places where young people are. We should have GIFs and memes and social media cards that catch people's attention, and conversations in Twitter spaces and places where young people are, if we really want to engage with them and create a space where they feel like they can vote. And I know we've had issues about online engagement. In the US, they had people voting remotely, and we know that's not going to happen for this election. But, going forward, I think if young people could vote via WhatsApp, you'd probably see a lot more young people voting. And so, thinking about the world in which young people are and the ways that they engage with that world, and how do we make a voting process that meets young people where they are, rather than enforcing this very traditional system that, we might all think works onto young people.
Thank you so much, Crystal. You've said a lot in terms of it seems as though the government isn't showing enough initiative or doing enough to get that young person's vote. Nhlanhla, this is where I want to ask you, should our political leaders value the youth vote? Nhlanhla, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. Hi to everyone. Look, I think political leaders should value young people's votes, but they are scared of doing it. They understand why they're not creating the infrastructure for young people to vote, because there isn't any infrastructure. If a popular DJ or artist has a party, they do more to attract young people than what government does to attract young people to vote. That's disgusting. For me, that's plain disgusting. We're not here to be diplomatic because we're not politicians. We're here to say it as it is. We've been challenging the IEC to go to where the young people are. You know where they are? They're not in the street corners. They're at schools and in lecture rooms. Yes. Why can't young people register to vote in classroom? And then when come voting time, have a special voting category in the classroom. Already you've opened a new door of young people in millions that will be voting, whether you like it or not. Why is that not being done? And you know, the WhatsApps, we live in a world of technology. Why is the IEC being left behind? Why is government not facilitating solutions that will make sure that young people participate? Because the future of the country is in the hands of young people. But I guess, again, they do know why. Because old people are hogging positions of power. They don't want young people to access politics. Because there's more young people in the country than there are old people. So if young people start being conscious and being conscientized around voting and politics, we'll outnumber them. And they understand that. And that's why they're not giving the platform for young people to express leadership in politics.
Thank you, Nhlanhla. You mentioned the fact that when it comes to event organizers, particularly entertainment organizers, they find many avenues to market and make sure that they incentivize people to come to the events. I just want to ask, Rwanda, besides digitization, are there any other macro factors that you, in your perspective, believe contribute to the low youth turnout or non-voting during elections by young people?
Yes, that's for me, correct?
For Rwanda. But you can answer, and then Rwanda, can you please add on to that?
Okay. So I think what contributes to that more than anything is that if you look around, the mind is always a slave to the environment. I don't care who you are. If you want to be a doctor, you must start having doctors as friends, or at least people who are studying to become doctors. You have a higher chance of actually being a doctor. If you look at the environment coming to the townships, there's a bottle store every corner. The social ills are higher than anything that's productive. So what do you think is going to happen? When come voting time, you are faced with youth that is high, that is drunk, that is just irritated, agitated, and disgruntled with everything that's going on around them. Do you think that's an environment where you can attract them to go make a difference for the future? Because they're stuck in the current. Their minds are too small. They're not, government is not creating an environment where people can actually excel. Young people actually want to do the right thing. They just don't have the opportunity. So I blame it on the environment, and we should do more to make sure that the environment is in a better position to accommodate the mindset that the young people want to pursue.
Thank you, Nhlanhla. So Rwanda has mentioned the socioeconomic environment that young people find themselves in. What do you have to add in terms of other macro factors that might be contributing to the low youth participation when it comes to elections?
I mean, the right of the matter is that if you look at, for example, go to any township right now and see the number of young people roaming the streets. And I always say, because I make time to whether go to Soweto or go to Alex, because those are the nearest township since I'm based in Joburg, that these young people, for them to drink during the day, is because they've lost hope. There's nothing that is worth a while for them to do. There's no, even infrastructure. I was doing an interview yesterday in one of the local radio stations in Malahle, that even if you look at the sports facilities in the township, there's nothing there to give young people hope to do something with their lives, because they say a healthy body is a healthy mind. So those are some of the things that the government, in terms of the ward councillors, they're not investing in a young person within the respective community so that they produce whether an athlete, a swimmer, and so forth. So young people are just left there with, as Nhlanhla is saying, every corner there's a bottle store, there's a tavern, you know, there's gasis banban, and they just sit there and drink the whole day, and they have lost hope. And now this is where the government needs to come in, but also agreeing with what Ntanta is saying in terms of the IEC. The IEC is not this only elections. Over the past few years, the IEC seems not to understand the youth vote and what the youth vote needs to be engaged on for them to see elections being important, and for them to understand that they've got the power to change their surrounding through using that vote. I'll give an example. Today, the President of the Republic of South Africa has sent a special envoy to Eswatini. Young people in Eswatini want the democracy that we're enjoying today. But what we have today, our young people in this country seem not to understand that we are actually privileged, while other countries in the continent, we've seen during elections, the violence that takes place in some of the countries in the continent. We are still privileged in South Africa. During elections, there is no violence. The elections are always peaceful in most cases, but government needs to do more, the ward councillors who are going to be, and especially the ones who are young. And I'll take you back. Look at Fees Must Fall. We had young people across all political parties uniting around Fees Must Fall. I'm still waiting to see for a day where in Parliament, those young people across all political parties standing and uniting, championing interest of young people in Parliament. One hopes that also the candidates for this upcoming elections, especially the young people, will unite across political parties, because the issues and the challenges facing young people are the same, you know. So they need to be the voice of those young people when they're in council, and not subject themselves every time to the party line. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So besides what we're seeing as structural distractions based on socioeconomic situations, what initiatives, and this is to you, Hodzo, being part of a program or a nonprofit organization that seeks to activate young people, what initiatives, what programs are there to overcome the challenges that young people are facing, the distractions that they have from voting, in order to activate them to increase their citizenry, and their participation in elections, in government, and anything with regards to rebuilding this country to the country that we want to see as young people.
Right. Thank you very much. I think I want to agree with what Crystal mentioned in her presentation, that young people are out there in communities working towards driving change in their communities. And also what Nhlanhla mentions around the environment within which these young people are working. Does it encourage them to want to contribute towards building the country, or does it hinder them from expressing this and working towards building a better communities and a better country for all of us? I'm working with an organization called Activate Change Drivers. We have over 4,000 young people across the country who are committed to various pro-social initiatives. These are young people who come from different backgrounds. Some of them come from the most poverty-stricken areas of the country. But there's one thing that is common about all of these young people that we work with, is the fact that they are committed to driving change in their communities. And that is what brings us together as part of the Activate Change Drivers Network. So over the past 10 years, we've developed a training program for young leaders to look at how do we equip young leaders to be able to navigate the socio-political landscape in their own communities, to know where are the challenges and how do they respond to these challenges in their communities. I'll give an example of one interesting thing that young people have been doing over the last few years. So since the 2016 elections, we've had young people from the Activate Change Drivers Network serving as observers in elections. So you have like over 200 young people who have no incentive outside of just being committed to driving change, to go and observe elections in their respective communities. So those are some of the examples of the things that young people are doing in their communities. My colleague Reboni just mentioned an example of the Fees Must Fall movement. That is another example of young people being committed, wanting to create change in communities. But the important thing is, how are we working as different stakeholders, as government, as civil society organizations, as the private sector, to ensure that we continuously build the capacity of young people to create this change that we want to see. And I believe that the answers to these questions lie in us collaborating amongst ourselves as government, civil society, to really build the capacity of a young person in their community, whether it's a rural, urban community, to make a difference where they are. And that is, for me, a very important thing that we need to be pushing towards.
And Hotza, where Activate Change has initiated its programs in the communities that it's been involved in, you've mentioned some of the programs where young people are participating in the electoral, in other positions. Have you seen an increase in youth voter participation in those communities? So would you say those kind of programs are actually having impact in increasing active citizenry amongst young people?
Yeah, I think one thing that we can agree on is that young people are generally alienated from the country's democratic culture. And that's something that my colleagues have tried to unpack, to say these are some of the factors that hinder participation of young people in democratic processes and structures. But there are examples of things that are being done that are positive, which, if they are replicated at broader scale, can really make a difference in ensuring that young people participate meaningfully in their communities through not just elections, because right now we are focusing on elections, but once elections have come and gone, how are we ensuring that young people remain plugged into these processes, remain included in various decision-making processes and structures? That, for me, is the critical component of this conversation, to say, beyond elections, yes, the elections will come and we will vote for leaders of our choices, but beyond that, how do we ensure that young people remain engaged and remain meaningfully engaged and active in their own communities? And that is the essence of our work at Activate, to try and ensure that young people understand what their socio-political landscape. They understand what questions do they need to ask, who do they need to ask these questions to, and how do they contribute towards contribute positively into the public realm.
Okay, thank you. Crystal, thank you so much. Crystal, as an individual also working for a non-governmental organization that works with young people, what initiatives have you guys put in place to really increase that participation by young people in local government, in elections, and in society as a whole?
So I think particularly in the lead up to these elections, we've been hosting Twitter Spaces weekly, where we've had a range of people come and speak about various issues around the local elections, and just give a space for young people to air their views. Even talking to people from the Institute for Economic Justice, so that young people understand, how important the budget is, with the medium-term budget coming up. So just creating those Twitter spaces, we found has been very valuable. And beyond that, our ongoing work around creating spaces for engagement with policy with young people is a WhatsApp, we call it the Working Policy Group, and we co-run that WhatsApp group with Youth Lab, who are also obviously very involved with increasing participation amongst young people with policy processes. And what we found is, we started that group in March of 2020 as lockdown hit. And the group was actually created as a response to trying to increase the breadth and the depth of consultation with young people on the national youth policy, which at that stage had just come out for comment. And Youth Lab and ourselves were lobbying hard to say to government, you didn't give enough time for comments to be submitted. You haven't really consulted with young people in meaningful ways. And then COVID hit. So suddenly our ideas of between the organizations having in-person engagements, we couldn't do that. And so we created this WhatsApp group. And so we've really tried and tested it over the last year and a half, going on to 2 years now. And what we found is really great about that space is the people on the group have really made it their own. So they share a lot of information around policy processes. When there was the NYDA board selection, there was a lot of discussion. The group was very active as people were integrating the candidates and watching the interviews live. And when there is a policy that relates to youth, we started, as I said, with the national youth policy, but since then we've obviously discussed the integrated youth development strategy, which is the implementation plan essentially for the national youth policy. We've discussed the general education certificate and a range of other things. And what we found really helps is breaking down that policy. So we at Youth Capital will read through the policy and pull out the 5 things we want to talk about, put them into, little JPEGs, put it forward to the group. And then we have a poll afterwards asking young people to submit any comments they weren't able to submit to a Google form, and then inviting young people to sign on. So a simple act like that, where we say, anybody in this group, send us your name and which province you're from if you want to be signing on to a document that has 10 established NGOs already on there. Sonke Gender Justice, Youth Lab, Youth Capital, Activate, always co-signs with us as well. And so we have power in these existing NGOs that the government is aware of, but then young people are brought into that and they have their names stated on that piece of paper saying, we've contributed to this. And I think that that's really powerful and it's such a simple thing to really do. And I think if more organizations could create those kinds of spaces, especially with COVID, I don't know when it's going to be that we can have hundreds of young people in one space ever again, but you can have 300 people in a WhatsApp group. And so, I think that's how we very practically have included young people and continue to do so in the policy space.
Thank you, Crystal. And a follow up to that, which I also want Untitled to answer. Crystal, with all the initiatives that you are doing, how do we scale that up to make sure that there's no young person left behind? As mentioned, when Tlantla said the young person that is sitting in the corner and next to a tavern, how do we make sure that they are also able to be exposed to these programs that non-governmental organizations are doing? And how do we scale it up even now during the pandemic, because the local government elections are coming up very soon? How do we scale it so that no young person is left behind?
For us at Youth Capital, we're a small team. People are often surprised. We're a team of 4. So we're a really small team and we try to be a national campaign, but it's impossible for us to be everywhere. And so we say our strength is the young people in our network. We fully acknowledge that. And so a question that we raise, and I'm always interested to hear people's feedback, is how do you take this online engagement, as we say, offline? So it's that person in the WhatsApp group that goes to their friend at the tavern, at the place where they're studying and says, I'm in this group, I've noticed you've got an interest, don't you want to join? Because it's only through that, or that young person saying, hey, we're going to make a group. We really care about the youth center that's not functional in our municipality, and we're going to make a WhatsApp group. Youth Capital, Activate, whoever's present in there, can you come and help us, facilitate a session with our young people on WhatsApp? So, to say to young people that we as NGOs have limited resources, and as much as we want to scale it, I personally, the team of 4 can't be everywhere. But I think that young people have the passion and the drive. And if we say to them, here's a format that works, a WhatsApp chat, have the facts, you want young people to come to this chat, and then at the end of it, you're going to put a letter together that you're going to present to your ward councillor to say, these are the things that are wrong. The center hasn't functioned for the last 10 years. And these 20 young people in the area have signed on and said to you, by this date, you need to meet with us and give us an answer about what's happening. And so I think we can kind of model behavior for young people, but then we need young people to be our hands and our feet in these communities, and to take that learnings that we've tried and tested it Our resources are all available for anybody to use and share, and then take it forward so that we can spread the message, because there are lots of young people that are excluded because they don't have data, they don't have network coverage, and we are working on those systemic things, but we acknowledge that it's not as inclusive as we'd really like it to be.
Yes. So Ndandla, I would like you to add on to that, especially because in part of all the conversations that young people are having, one of the crucial conversation is to not always look at government for solutions. And so hence why there are non-governmental organizations, there are individuals that are looking to really create the change that they want to see. How do we make sure that, the ladies and the gentlemen that you mentioned that are sitting in the corner, that are stuck at home because they don't have jobs, they don't have money, they don't have access to the internet, how do we make sure that they get involved without us necessarily relying on the government?
Sure. I think the smarter we think we are becoming is actually the opposite. If you look at going back to the basics, it works. Not everyone, actually, a small part of the South African population is active on social media. People think everybody's on social media. It's just a minority on social media. That's why it's like when someone says, did you see what they're saying about you on Twitter? I really don't care, because you're speaking about a serious minority of people. Now, if you want to touch a large part of the young people's population, go to the ground, because people still live in the real world, which is on the ground. Every part of South Africa has a ward, correct? Otherwise, we wouldn't have a voting system. Now, what we do as a plan is that we say each young person in their ward, young people in each ward must come together, hold the ward councillors accountable. Forget about the president at the top. You start in your community. You don't try to save the world, save your community. And if all young people do right by their community, everything falls into place and then the country becomes a better place. Do you know how everyone wants to be a president, but they do nothing for their community? When you come to me and say that I'm a leader and I want to do this, I ask you, what have you done for your people? Example, I'm not saying I'm the greatest young people of all time, or I'm one of the greatest young people of all time, but if you go to my community being Soweto, anywhere in Soweto, they'll tell you.
Thank you, Madam Lawson Ndandla. Rwane, I'd like you to join at this point, whilst we wait for Ndandla to connect back.
So my area, it's moving from Eskom to City Power. So the network will be a problem, definitely. So I'm sorry about that. But so what I was saying is that we need accountability from young people. We as young people must play an accountability role more than trying to play an active leadership role, because we can't assume leadership of the country overnight. Because once we start holding all leaders accountable from ward councillor level up to the president level, we're learning how the country's administration works. We're getting administrative experience. And when it's our turn, we'll do a better job than them. Because right now, young people are just idling, waiting for leadership. It doesn't work that way. Your ward councillor right now, a lot of young people don't even know where their offices are. We're being lazy. We can't always just be blaming government. What are we doing? So we need to take the initiative and take the responsibility to ensure that everything that happens in our wards, we hold everyone accountable, from politicians, meaning the ward councillors, to business that trades in our wards, to the social environment. We hold everyone absolutely accountable as young people. And then from there, we graduate to holding the city accountable, the province accountable, and ultimately we unite to hold the entire country accountable. And we'll be doing that with serious experience that comes with it, because we've been holding everyone accountable coming this way.
And what do you say, Ndandla, to the discourse of the fact that one of the things that do have young people's attention are celebrities, music and entertainment, acting, etc. And there's a discourse as to whether celebrities should play an important role, because they do have followers, they do have fans, they do have the audience, across music genres, across TV shows. Do you think they should be spreading that narrative as well of holding government officials accountable from your community, but also the narrative of increasing voter participation and encouraging young people to go and vote? Where do you lie with
When it comes to celebrities, I've got a big love-hate relationship with celebrities because they don't understand the power they have over the subconscious and conscious minds of young people. But for them, it's separate. We must actually look at why they are celebrities and why they have this power. Media itself gives individuals this power. If it wasn't for the media, you wouldn't know a soccer player because you don't see them on TV. Orlando Pirates is a team that gives them the platform to become the individual brilliant person or young person they are. So these media platforms, from traditional media to social media, we should be giving serious attention to people who are really doing great in their communities, not only social power. If you look at the media, people are given social power, not any other power. Now, we need to start engaging the media to say that, make sure that we give the same spotlight, the same type of attention, the same type of opportunity for people to express themselves like I don't want to mention people here, but like whoever, a celebrity, for example. I say that again?
So as youth leaders or community leaders, to give them the same spotlight. Yes.
People who fly the flag high for this country and do great by their community are not given an opportunity to express themselves on any platform. They actually look down upon, because half the time those people are not materialistic. And again, the media, social media, is responsible for only highlighting things that are just materialistic, that are nonsense as far as I'm concerned. If you look at your social media, go to Instagram and just go to your homepage. Just scroll. Tell me what's progressive about what you're seeing. Absolutely nothing. But everything that's not progressive is getting 1 million likes. See someone who is nobody helping kids. They don't get any like, because that's how we're conditioned. And I blame traditional and social media for that. But again, look, I don't think it'll change anytime soon. And for those celebrities with the power right now as we speak, they have the responsibility, because they do assume a large following from young people. They have a responsibility. But now you should see how the political parties are behaving. They are gunning for these celebrities, and they're politicizing them. So again, when their platform is politicized, there's no hope for young people, because I for one, actually don't subscribe to politics. I hate politics, because politics in its nature is very divisive. I want people to come together regardless of politics, race, or being sexist or anything. If young people can come together, the country will do great.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we go into the Q&A section, Ravon, I just want to ask you, as a young person facing high youth unemployment, as a person who is witnessing and seeing the corruption and lack of service delivery within the country, why should I have hope in the electoral system, and why should I vote?
Well, unfortunately, you have characterized the problems of South Africa. And that is a very difficult question, because, as I said earlier on, young people have given up on the system, but unfortunately, it is important for them to go out and vote, because that's their power to change. And they can vote for any political party, because the different political parties have put forward their manifestos. If a young person who voted in the 2016 local government elections for a particular ward councillor, and they feel that since 2016 up to 2021, this councillor has not done anything for them, there are other candidates within their ward. But obviously, as I say, that looking at the manifesto and what also those councillor candidates stand for within their respective wards, as they are doing door-to-door campaigning, engaging, because obviously the local government, you'd expect a candidate of a councillor that will speak directly to the issues that are surrounding their communities and localizing the challenges within the respective community. So obviously, a young person needs to also go out to some of these rallies, or whether programs where these different candidates are speaking, just to get a sense, of who's promising what, and then they can then see that this works for them. But staying at home, you can't sit at home and want to criticize, if the council is not doing what they're doing, or because you did not give that person the power by giving them your vote. So it's important that as young people, they should not give up, but they should continue to look at the different councillors that are out there and decide for themselves.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience to any of our panelists, or to all of them? And whilst we just wait for questions, I just want to ask Crystal, I'd like to pose the same question to you. Given the state of the nation, given the hopelessness that young people feel, why should they still go out and vote?
Because it really is the only way we can change things, right? And I think I like Ntlantla's point about changing the young people's mindset to say, you need to start in your community where you are. There's these issues of corruption and a lack of accountability that we see at a national state level start off in municipalities. And the only way that's going to stop is if that community says to that ward council, we hold you accountable. You made these promises to me and I voted for you. And I am going to follow you over your term to make sure that you deliver on them. And starting at that local level, because that's really where we feel, politics affect us, right? In our access to libraries and transport services and waste collection and water and electricity and all of these things that we need to live. That's really where we feel that impact. And I think if young people can realize that, as Ntlantla says, the power that they have, they're the largest demographic. If you look at the 15 to 34-year-old, they make up the largest part of the population, the voting population. And so they have the biggest power, really. If every young person turned out to vote, they could completely turn things on its head in terms of which parties are in power. And so for young people to really realize that power and then use it wisely and holding the elected officials to account post-election is, for me, as important as actually showing up and making a mark.
Can I just come in a bit?
Yes,
Crystal provoked a thought.
Yes.
Now, I'll give you an example. There's a place called Makanda Municipality, which historically is known as Grimtown. And one thing what was interesting about this community is that they worked across racial lines together as the community, across class, because of issues of service delivery. I can tell you, as we're going to these elections on the 1st of November, there's a case sitting at the Bloemfontein Appeals Court, which is appealed by the government because the community took the municipality to court, and they won the case in the Makana High Court that the municipality should be dissolved. So the communities continue to also have power to make sure that whether councillors across political parties in council, if they don't represent them, they can also challenge them in court. And this is something that we're not talking about. What happened in Rwanda was history.
Yes, and I guess maybe it goes back to what Ntlantla was saying in terms of what potentially what media focuses on, potentially what social media focuses on, because that is amazing news. That is a positive news that it shows examples of how you can take the power back. That even as communities, as young people, we are not powerless. If we come together, we are able to effect change and even use the system itself to effect the change that we want, as you mentioned with the courts. Kgotsa, would you like to also add to the question that I posed? Given everything that young people see, why should I vote if I have no hope in the electoral system, if I do not have hope in the democracy or even the government, why should I vote?
Yeah, I think representation and participation of all groups, including young people, is key to ensuring that we have a vibrant democracy. And so it is the responsibility of us as young people to show up. And when the situation demands that we show up, we must show up, and we must show up having equipped ourselves in order to contribute in spaces. So I think that is something that really is important for young people to say, here are the elections coming up. How do we ensure that we occupy that space, we contest space? I think there are, within the different political parties, I know one political party that is pushing the mandate of Mochapalo, which literally means that we want young people to stand as candidates. That's the way that young people should contest the spaces. No one is going to give us power on a silver platter. We must contest spaces, and we must ensure that we are equipped in order to meaningfully contribute in the different spaces that we occupy. And so just a final word from my side, in the 2021 local government elections, we need to see more youth representation. And for that to happen, we need to ensure that young people are standing up as ward councillors in their communities. I'll give an example of what young people are doing within Activate. We have young people from ANC, Patriotic Alliance, EFF, that are standing up in these elections as candidates. And that's, for me, is something very exciting, because we are not pushing one political party over the other, but we are saying contest spaces, equip yourself, build your own capacity in order to ensure that you are able to represent your own interests as young people. The youth agenda can only be pushed by young people, and they must be equipped to push that agenda forward. So that for me is very important.
Absolutely. And a reminder to the audience in attendance, if you have any question, which we encourage you to ask any of the panelists, please put your question either in the chat box or in the Q&A chat box, so that we can definitely address it and ask the relevant individual. In closing, because we have about 10 minutes left, I'd like for each of the panel to please just give your closing remarks as to what could political leaders do. And, you know, I've read examples from other places in the world, you know, to encourage youth voter participation. I've seen things as support mock elections, you know, go to schools and encourage mock elections within the school so that young people can see how it works and understand that, introduce mandatory voting, potentially even lower the voting age. You know, we're seeing that because so many people, as many younger people are also on social media, they're also becoming more politicized. They're also becoming more aware of what is around them with Google and with social media. And so maybe lower the voting age, that might increase the youth participation. And others that I've seen in other countries where they make first-time voting a legal thing. You have to do it almost like how you enroll into the army. You have to enroll you have to vote, especially if it's the first time that you vote. It's a special rite of passage. In your opinion, in the examples that you've read and what you've seen in your experience with your different organizations, as well as what you do on a day-to-day, what do you think government can do to encourage youth voter participation? I'll start with Crystal.
Thank you. So I would say no to mandatory voting, because we've seen how people respond to mandatory vaccination, and young people particularly do not respond well to old people forcing them to do things. And so I think that might have the opposite effect. Young people might revolt. So I would say that, you know, rather use the carrot than the stick approach. In my experience, that always works better, regardless of the age of people you're trying to entice to do something. And to go back to my original point with saying to politicians, how do you engage? You know, you can't just go into a community and hand out a couple of t-shirts and have like a rally and expect that that's going to get young people to vote for you. You have to show that you understand youth representation. And so if you're a political party, how, you know, as Kotso said, how are you putting forward young leaders, and how are you training up young leaders? Because we can't just expect these young people to materialize out of thin air. It has to be an intentional process by political parties to groom young people and equip them to be good leaders. And so what work are you doing around that? Because to just expect it for young people to just show up and then suddenly be equipped to be ward councillors and MPs is an unrealistic expectation. So I think, you know, long term, that's what all political parties should be doing. And then to say to, you know, young people themselves, to, as I said, recognize your power, do your research, do your homework, understand who you're voting for and why you're voting for and what you can do post-elections to hold them accountable. And to those politicians who get elected, have an open door policy for young people, make it possible and easy for young people to engage with you. Think about how young people in your community engage. Do they engage in a community space? Can you engage with them at schools? Is it a WhatsApp chat? What is the mechanism of engagement? And meet young people where they are. Because if you expect young people to come to you, but you have a very traditional, conservative, old school way of doing things, young people are never going to come to you. And so changing the way we think and changing the way we operate, I think, is going to be key. And I really hope that as many young people as possible turn up on the 1st of November, because as we've said, the change in your community is where it really starts, and that will then bleed out into change at a national level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Crystal. And Nhlanhla, can you add to that your final remark as to what can the government do to encourage youth participation? And if you can please make it short and precise. Can you unmute yourself, please? You're on mute.
Yeah. So for me, I'm saying that, unfortunately right now, it's a little bit too late. The bus is gone. Only the registered youth, we're encouraging them to please vote. And in townships, you have a problem. There's politics and politicians are trying to use young people for funny things. Some people who are disgruntled about service delivery want to go against the elections. They can obviously only use young people to do that. So I'm saying to those young people, be an active citizen, take responsibility, don't be allowed to be used for distraction. Instead, go out there on the day. I know you're not registered, but go out, pull a chair out for gogo, get some water out for the gogos in the line, and so forth. So it's not all done for you. You can also play your part on the day. But for those that are registered, let's go out there and vote for, make an informed decision, research the different political parties. Let's not just vote because they said we must vote. Let's vote and make sure that our vote counts for the future of the country. And lastly, IEC will even take this to court if we have to. We'll as young people, will not stop. We'll make sure that come the national elections, 2024, young people will vote in the classroom, because that's the only door we can open to the millions of young people in South Africa.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. Before I continue, I just want to pose a question to the panel, and whoever feels like they can answer this, please do. So the question is from one of the attendees, and it is, what is the panel's understanding of the youth diversity economic challenges? Anyone can take that question. So what is the panel's understanding of the youth diversity's economic challenges?
Let me try, since everyone is quiet. And I was going to actually say it as I was wrapping up, that we can't expect whoever wanting the young people to be used as voting cows for every elections, and which I want to differ with Nhlanhla a bit. Different political parties, when they go and campaign, they play on people's emotions, and which are economic challenges across different racial, and which COVID has also exposed that the government missed an opportunity to restructure this economy, because COVID actually put everyone at the same level. I would see white people going to an ATM and not finding money in an ATM, which is something that in the past I could not experience. But during COVID, we saw a lot of people across racial lines struggling financially. And the result of the matter is that the ruling party has been failing the people of this country, because the environment is not conducive for even a young person to go into business. It is very difficult. So across all racial issues, young people face serious challenges economically, and they will continue to do so, because of we still see that even the land or the economy is in the hands of the minority in this country. And promises were made in 1994 around the economy. Until today, it's 27 years later, promises are being made, and we have seen the ruling party, President Ramaphosa, as campaigns that forgive us, we want to do things differently. But the question is that, as Ntande said, going to the 2024 elections, will we see between now a difference that indeed the ruling party would have redeemed itself for those elections? But the result of the matter is that economically, young people are suffering across all races.
Yeah, can I just add to the point that Reboni is raising there, to say that young people in general, their condition is characterized by poverty, by high unemployment rates, and there is a mandate that government has to address these issues. As Reboni has correctly pointed out, that there have been challenges. Government has not been coming to the party as it should. And for me, what is important beyond what government is doing is what is it that we are doing in our communities to uplift our own communities. I've been following the work that Nhlanhla has been doing through the Soweto Parliament. For me, that kind of community-based activism is what we need to foster and promote in trying to address some of these challenges that are facing us today. Yes, there's a role that government needs to play, but we need to take stock and say, what is it that we must do in order to raise the consciousness levels of our communities, for them to demand the services that they rightly deserve. And just one last point, I'll speak about the condition of the African youth in particular, because these are the people that are that face the most brand of all of these challenges that we are raising. There's issues that are facing all of us as young people in the country, but there are particular issues that are facing Black communities across the country. And until we have a frank and honest conversation about those conditions, we are not going to address the challenges that are facing the country. Yeah, so those are just that's just my contribution to the discussion, to say, how do we ensure that we foster greater inclusion of young people in the decision-making processes of communities? How do we ensure that we empower them to be able to take advantage of economic opportunities that are out there? So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And as you mentioned, also focusing on looking at how we can build the economic opportunities within your own community. We're about to close off, so can I ask you to respond briefly? What do you think government can do to encourage youth voter participation?
That's for me.
Yes, so your closing remark,
Okay.
be really short and sweet.
Okay. Unfortunately, as Nhlanhla said, I mean, the 21st has passed. The voter registration has passed, but the ones that are there, you know, that the government really needs to be more visible on the ground, not only through social media, because the reality of the matter is that right now on the ground, it's political parties, you know, and we're not seeing government on the ground, you know, speaking and encouraging young people to go and vote, because we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, but some are still waiting for the first industrial revolution. So we need people from government being on the ground, not politicians or deployed cadres who will be on the ground, but government needs to, the remaining 2 weeks needs to be on the ground with the people to make sure that they encourage and not intimidate, because some of these government officials, we know that they come from certain political parties, and not intimidate people, but to make sure that people go and vote for any political party of their choice.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Khotso, are you still there? Like your final remarks on how the government can encourage of those that have registered, of young people that have registered, to make sure that the turnout is much better than previous elections.
Sorry, is that for me?
Yes, your final
All
remarks.
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll reiterate the point that I made earlier. We really need to promote community-based activism. So as colleagues have mentioned, there's really little that can be done right now to ensure greater participation in the upcoming elections. But beyond the elections, what is it that we will be doing in our communities? What is it that we'll be doing differently to ensure that young people are participating meaningfully in the different decision-making structures and processes in their communities and throughout the different levels of government.
Thank you so much. Wow, thank you to each of our panelists. Everyone is very passionate about this topic, which is really important because I'm assuming we're all part of the youth. I hope so. And so to see that that part of the people that are trying to drive the change within the country, within the community, is us ourselves, young people. And just to reiterate and summarize some of the things that have been mentioned is that we should recognize our own power and know that we can even use it within the system and within the tools that are available for us. We should play our part within our community and not let ourselves be used as voting cows, especially when it comes to these peak times, which are like elections. And of course, as you said, Hotter, promote community activism, even when it comes to the economic opportunities that we're looking for. How do we start to build that within our communities? And then, of course, what you said, Owana, which is very important, it's not just the political parties that need to be encouraging young people to vote. It's actually the government of the day within the community, the government of the day within the country. They need to do it because it's part of their responsibility in leading a country. And then, of course, which is so important, I think that one of the things that the Department of Communication that is here should take back to the powers that be, is that government needs to engage with young people in the places that young people are at. And one of the examples that Dantle gave was that for 2024, IEC needs to introduce voting in classes, and we've mentioned also voting on WhatsApp. And in this fourth industrial revolution that we're entering, other countries are far, far away into it. There's so many avenues that the government can use to engage young people in the relevant places, not in the traditional ways that they've engaged with young people. And so I hope that for everyone who's attended, that they've gotten a nugget from any one of our panelists and the greater conversation at large. And again, I just want to give a special thanks to the organizers of this event, which is a very, very, very important event, for organizing this, because as mentioned, Africa is one of the youngest population, or continent that has the youngest population, and South Africa as well. And so the future belongs to us, the young people. And so I just want to give thanks to the Government Communication and Information System, as well as Agape Youth Movement, for putting this event together. And we hope that it will be shared. It will be shared on social media. It will be shared with the relevant media parties so that we can get more people activated. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. If you have registered, which we hope you've registered to vote, that you turn out on the day of local elections and make your mark so you can see the change you want. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Power to young people.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Anyone still there?
I'm here.
Thanks, colleagues.
I'm still here. I'm about to leave.
Yeah, but before you leave, I think for the guys, for all the panelists, if there's any interest in, maybe you see value in what we do, you'd like me to help anywhere, please feel free to shout out and reach out. We'll be there 100%. Share resources. I mean, I'm always available to fly the flag anywhere, anytime. So maybe the host can just share each contact and we'll take it from there.
I was going to say, can we have the other email addresses of the panelists? That will be great, please. I give consent and Klantla gives consent for Poppy. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I'm just going to find you guys on social media and then just get into your DMs.
Yeah, well, I'm like a client, I'm terrible until my comms person says, please go on Twitter and retweet something. I'm not there. Yeah, I'm also bad. So, yeah.
I think Subsiso wants to say something. Subsiso, you want to say something?
Yes. How are you guys?
All good.
Thanks. Hi, Swu. How are you?
I'm good, and thanks. I wanted to ask, how can we come up with new financial systems that speak to the African child, besides the ones that we currently have?
Oh, I'm no economist.
You know,
Listen, I was about to say that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the time when people ask such a question is because they've got the answer. Don't be shy, just tell us what's the answer.
No, it's not that I have the answer. It's just that I'm interested with the, you guys, you actually, I joined the meeting late. So
Okay.
I was quite interested in how you guys think, and I want to know how you see or how you would come up with these things, since you're already in the forefront in terms of leadership, in terms of your respectful places as individuals.
Look, I think from my side, I'm a non-practicing economist, but look, the economic models change all the time. I mean, right now we're living in capitalism, but it's never always been capitalism. I mean, there were times where it was, the barter system, the time where it was communism, socialism, the feudal system. So economic models, economic dispensations change, right? And I don't want to be quoted, but I am slowly researching in terms of the fact that what is the next economic system that we need to look at outside of capitalism, but that still allows for upward mobility of anyone, right? Because that's the one thing that everyone loves about capitalism, is the fact that unlike previous economic systems in the world, is the fact that anyone can come out of poverty, right? You can start selling whatever and make millions, right? There isn't the fact that you were born poor, you're gonna die poor because of the class that you were born in. So that's the nice thing about capitalism, but it's not working because the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So there isn't much way of basically asking the question, how much is enough? After you've made $1 billion, is that enough? And what should be the wage gap between a CEO and their let's call it least earning employee? Those questions capitalism doesn't address, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in. And so I think there's a lot of people still thinking about this. And with fintech, to be honest, and the ideas that are coming out of fintech, there's opportunities for people to participate. The only problem is that the African child isn't contributing or building as much fintech as non-African people, if that makes sense. So we're not building the solutions in the tech space that we're looking to build.
Sorry to interrupt you. I understand what you're trying to articulate, but what I'm trying to say is, can we come up with a system? Let's forget the other system that we currently have. Can we come up with a system that will level the playing field from a financial perspective for the African child?
Yeah. Can I come in there?
There's people who have ideas, because I'm part of I work a lot with entrepreneurs as well. So there are a lot of great ideas to level the playing field, especially when it comes to technology. It's just that when it comes to funding, people aren't getting the opportunity if I could say, venture capitalist funding isn't going to too many African-led financial ideas. And that's where I would say, where there's a great idea, right? Because regardless of whatever the economic system is going to be, it's all going to be digitized in the next 30 years. It's all going to roll out digitally. Even if it's not capitalism, it will, and it's whatever, let's call it roughism. Roughism in 20 years is going to be rolled out digitally. And so if we're not creating those technologies that are going to be rolled out digitally, that's going to be where we fail as the African person again, and we will be behind. So I would say one of the things that I've seen and I'm liking is where people are coming together, creating almost economic stokvels, to invest in African ideas and startups that they believe will change their community, instead of looking outside. So you and your friends, there's 50 and people are starting to build these economic stokvels where it's not about we're gonna put money so that once a month we hang out and chill. No, we're gonna put money together so that when there is an idea that is created by one of us within the African community, we're able to fund it. We're able to build it. We're able to make sure that it gets to the right people. There's a lot happening. It's just that making sure that we also invest in the ideas that will change how we were able to participate in the world of money and make more money for ourselves and have opportunity with money.
Nhlanhla, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I was actually saying that if we can unpack your question even further, it would help a lot of people now to think better, you know. So because you're asking about financial systems or economic systems, because and as much as they're related, sometimes depending where you're really coming from, sometimes you're speaking about how Black people can't access the banking system. Am I correct so far?
Yes, it's all about it starts from the bank.
Yeah. So that's where I really wanted to understand it, because I'm a believer in socialism, but again, it's got its own flaws. So and someone can come and say, no, me, I'm a capitalist, because in capitalism you can easily move from being poor to being extremely rich, because it gives you the environment gives you the platform to do such. So we need to really like understand where your question is coming from. But I think regardless of the system that's in place, as she was saying, regardless of the system that's in place, if people don't play their part, if you don't have enough active citizens, if government doesn't play its part, we're going to look for another solution thinking that doesn't work. Half the time, the policies are brilliant, the people are horrible. Right now, we've got a horrible bunch of leaders, because if you try to quantify corruption and give it and put a price to it or a tag to it, the value to it, from 1994 to today, it's unquantifiable. It's disgusting. It's in trillions and trillions and trillions, and that money could have went to making sure that the playing field is leveled, so that you don't see the difference between a child born in Bara today and a child born in Sentin Midi Clinic. When they both turn 18, they could have equal opportunity. So it's not as easy as us just answering it overnight. It really needs investment of time. We sit together, we brainstorm, we accept that opinion is not the one, or that the contribution is not. So it really needs us to be more invested. And my hand is always up if you want to have a different discussion about this any other time and have a different platform. I'm there.
I thank you for availing yourself. We need to exchange contact, because I would like to discuss this further, probably via a phone call, if possibly.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Spencer, for that. I think, panelists, if we can entertain one more question, I think from Cindy. So. And then I think actually we have closed, just for courtesy's sake.
Yeah, a cup discussion now.
Okay, Cindy, so go ahead. Cindy, so go ahead. I think Cindy is not with us. All right, thanks to you, panelists, and for your time and the lovely panel discussion you just had. I think there's so much more we can talk about, taking from the last question that Spusiso has raised. But thank you so much, and hopefully we meet soon, definitely. But have a lovely day.
All right, thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Sorry, but did you get my number?
Yeah, I just took a screenshot. That's why probably you see me funny. Sure, yeah.
All right. Please send me a WhatsApp so that I can give you a call. I want to discuss this before my mind drifts away.
All right, sharp. Thank you. Shasura.